VTS webinar on training facilitated by the Academy in a series of 3. The first covered VTS implementation and the next will touch on VTS assessment. I would kindly want to ask to switch off your camera and mute your microphone, as I will now give the floor to the Dean of the Worldwide Academy, Mr. Omar Fritz Eriksson, for an opening address. Thank you.
Il video è disattivato qua, prendi. Attiva il videocamera.
Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you.
Non ti stanno guardando.
Could you please mute? Let me see. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Geraldine, and good morning, good afternoon, and evening, everybody. Welcome to this very interesting seminar on VTS training. Education and training is an integral part of our lives as human beings. When we are born, our lifelong learning experience starts with acquiring basic skills of life, such as developing our vision, hearing, motorics, and language skills. And as we get older, our social and other skills, which enable us to function as members of our society, and today in the globalized world, start to develop. After that, we start to develop our formal skills and competences, which enable us to perform tasks and participate in processes at our working place. This is a lifelong learning process. As our careers develop, we gain more and more experience and responsibility, and need to continue to develop our skills. The two excellent speakers we have here today will address how to best develop VTS professionals worldwide in general, as well as how this is done at the regional or local level. I'm looking very much forward to these presentations, as well as the discussions in the question and answer session. So I wish you all an excellent webinar. Welcome to the Ayala family, and I'm convinced that you will find this time well spent. Over to you, Geraldine.
Thank you, Omar. This series of technical webinars is developed to address some specific challenges related to VTS worldwide. Each of these webinars include a lecture on such a topic, a case will be presented, and you will have the opportunity to discuss and ask questions. The subject of today is VTS training, as during our missions worldwide, we received many requests for support related to VTS training. And we realized that although we have excellent publications on VTS training, it's not obvious to start a VTS training program from scratch. Not only the Academy and its experts can provide you the answers. Actually, you can harvest the best experience from the VTS community itself. And I see we have some excellent experts in the audience, and I trust they will contribute with some good advice during the question and answer session. So please use this webinar as a platform to connect. Before we start, I would like to inform that there will be a question and answer session at the end of all presentations. So please feel free to write your question in the chat box or raise your hand. And after the official webinar closes, recording will be stopped and the line will stay open to chat. So feel free to stay a bit longer with us. The recording of this webinar will be posted on the Ayala YouTube channel afterwards. For now, to save bandwidth, please switch off your camera and mute your microphone. The first speaker of today is my colleague, Kevin Gregory, and he is the Education and Development Manager in the Academy. Kevin served at sea as a navigator prior to studying for a degree in law and postgraduate diploma in education. Kevin was subsequently appointed as the VTS Manager for the Port of London Authority. Prior to joining Ayala, Kevin served as the International Harbour Master Association representative to the IMO and to Ayala. Kevin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine, and hello to everyone. And it's nice to see so many familiar faces online. So what I'll do first of all is the tricky piece of sharing my screen. And here we go. So hopefully the presentation is there now. So welcome to this Ayala Worldwide Academy webinar on VTS training. Thank you for the kind introduction, Geraldine. So my name's Kevin, for everyone who doesn't know me, and I look after education and training and development matters within the Ayala Worldwide Academy, and with a focus on developing our work in VTS, capacity building and training worldwide. Now, the presentation that I will give will provide an overview of VTS training in general terms before my good friend and colleague Tran from Vietnam provides an overview of VTS training in the practical sense in Vietnam, and in particular how they've benefited from VTS training, which the Ayala Worldwide Academy has been very pleased to support over many years at the ASEAN VTS Training Centre in Malaysia. First of all, why do we provide a VTS? So why do we do it? Well, fundamentally, it's to provide high quality and consistent services to the mariner. So what do the mariners expect of a VTS? Well, in general, it could be reasonably stated that a mariner would expect good quality information at the right time in the right manner, so they can plan their passage through the VTS area. To have their movements within the VTS area managed so they don't unexpectedly come across any delays or congestion or problems on their voyage. And finally, that if anything goes a little bit astray, that a vessel is in danger of running aground, heading in an area they shouldn't be, that the VTS will intervene to try and help them get out of the challenging situation that they find themselves in. So these are the fundamental expectations of a VTS. And so we can see already that puts quite a level of responsibility on those operating the vessel traffic service. Now, for those of you who were at our first webinar a couple of weeks ago, you'll recall there was a discussion on the types of service. So with the hopeful approval of the new IMO VTS guidelines later this year, the three types of service that we know, information service, organisation service and navigation assistance service, will essentially be withdrawn, and instead a new focus will be given on the purpose of functions of a vessel traffic service. And this reflects that it's highly unlikely that any authority would go to the expense of implementing a VTS and not expect them to be able to achieve the functions that we can see in front of us. These are simply the purposes of the VTS as articulated in the new proposed IMO guidelines, and they correlate very nicely with the former types of service, thereby removing and resolving any ambiguity or difficulty in their interpretation. So we can see provision of timely and relevant information. That's our former information service. Management of traffic is the organisation service. Responding to developing situations is the navigational assistance service. So now every VTS, once the new guidelines come into force, should provide these services, of course, in a manner proportionate with the volume of traffic and the degree of risk and complexity within the area. So where to start? Often we get asked, where do we start with VTS implementation? There is indeed a lot to do. There are lots of matters to address, and starting out on a VTS journey can be a challenge. And this is where the Ayala framework and the Ayala standards can really help out. By following a logical process, you will be able to effectively identify the need for a VTS, design an appropriate VTS area, implement a proportionate suite of operational procedures, install quality equipment from the Ayala industrial members, and recruit and train professional teams And finally, through all of that, you should be able then to demonstrate the benefits of a VTS through an improvement in navigational safety in your VTS area. So there are three essential components to a VTS, and if any one of these is defective, then the VTS may be compromised. VTS is an active aid to navigation, and it requires professionally trained personnel to operate effectively, to interpret their technology, and to apply the procedures appropriately, as without properly trained and certified VTS professionals, the infrastructure and technology cannot be used and exploited, and the operational procedures which have been designed cannot be implemented efficiently. So personnel, professionals in the VTS context are critical, as without them, the VTS cannot function effectively and fulfill its capability. So to achieve harmonization for the mariner, that's what we're about in Ayala, we publish a range of standards which are supported by recommendations, guidelines, model courses, and manuals. Now, the standards provide the framework for harmonization. The recommendations provide direction on practices which must be carried out to comply with the standard. And the guidelines give options, suggestions, and best practices as to how the practices in the standards may be implemented. Now, the implementation of the Ayala standards not only serves to provide the important harmonization and familiar feeling for the mariner wherever they go, but also serves to help coastal states comply with their SOLAS obligations. So through implementing the standards, we can have a harmonized VTS for the benefit of the mariner. Looking at it another way, the Ayala documents help you implement solutions to solve practical problems on the ground in a harmonized manner. So here we can see a pathway from SOLAS all the way through to the VTS authority, showing how all of this links together. And by implementing the Ayala standards, we have the harmonization that the mariners need. The standards help you solve practical problems, and here's some examples from the VTS operational sense. So we have here a suite of recommendations and the questions which they answer. So you can see here they're very practical in nature, but through all of this we need the professional people, the professional VTS personnel to implement all of these and bring them to life to make the VTS effective and to enable the harmonized services for the mariner and to enhance the navigation safety in the VTS area. So let's look in more depth now at VTS training, having set the scene. So here's an extract from the draft IMO VTS guidelines, which we hope to see approved later this year. So here we can see that VTS personnel require generic training, on-the-job training, some periodic assessments, and the maintenance of competence, and to have appropriate certification. So these are now the essential ingredients of VTS qualifications and training, which are in the draft IMO guidelines. And here in the picture on the left, we can see some VTS training in action at the ASEAN Regional VTS Training Centre in Kuala Lumpur. And Tran, after me, will give some information on how the VTS training is brought to life at that great facility. So let's look at standard 1050 now, which is an Ayala standard on training and certification. How can this standard help? Well, its recommendations, guidelines and model courses provide very comprehensive information on how VTS training may be set up. Now, it's important to recall that all of the Ayala standards from top to bottom are prepared by our technical committees. So they're written by professionals who operate, manage, implement vessel traffic services from around the world. So these documents present a great deal of international experience and collaboration. The information comes from the practitioners on the ground delivering VTS. So for VTS training of particular usefulness, and I'd really recommend this document to you, is Ayala Guideline G1156. Now, this is a relatively new guideline and was published earlier this year. Much of the practical detail that was in the former recommendation R0103 or V103 is now contained in this guideline. So here is a good example of how the IMO guidelines, Ayala standards and recommendations provide clear direction as to how harmonization may be achieved, and the guidelines and model courses providing the options, suggestions and best practices as to how to implement them. So essentially on this slide, this is the overall framework that we have for VTS training within Ayala. And if you implement it, as we can see from the photo here, we have a batch of VTS professionals graduating, going to fulfill their important mission in the ASEAN region. So let's talk a bit about the people. What makes a VTS professional? So I use that phrase now, profession. We're seeing VTS professionals joining us to start their career. It's no longer an area where you may come off to round off a career at sea. Some people are starting out their career in VTS, and that's great to see. So the professionals, they naturally need to be trained in accordance with the Ayala standards, but there's more to it than that. Guideline G1156, which I referred to, provides advice on the recruitment and selection of VTS personnel, and that's a crucial first stage. One of the most common questions we're asked is, do VTS operators need to be mariners? And the answer can be found within the Ayala standards framework and in the documents. And the answer is not necessarily. The model courses do not assume that candidates are mariners. They're designed for anyone with the right characteristics to train them. The major point to consider when recruiting VTS personnel is the personal attributes, as this is something really which training cannot easily change. An individual's characteristics, things like courage, discipline, determination, reliability, integrity and loyalty, that they're built within a person to have the actual attributes to be a good VTS operator to fulfill the key functions. Of course, we do recruit mariners into VTS, and a big contribution is made there, and the training time can be reduced if mariners are recruited. But the training focuses in general on achieving a consistent and professional output, so what comes out at the end of the training, namely a VTS professional, as opposed to being prescriptive as to what the input level should be at the start of training. So we're very output focused in the VTS training standards in terms of delivering a qualified, competent VTS professional at the end of it. And the input really is concerned as to whether the person now have the right personal attributes to do the job. So where do we go for training? VTS training is now available around the world. We have a network of 35 accredited training organizations in 22 countries. Now, to deliver training, an organization must be both accredited and approved to deliver the course in question. Now, accreditation is focused on quality management, how the training organization operates and is managed to ensure quality and consistency in their processes and procedures. Approval, on the other hand, is the validation that the training they offer complies with the model course in question and also reflects current educational best practice, is interactive, is properly assessed, and delivers the required outputs at the end, namely qualified VTS professionals. Now, the accreditation and approval process is rightly vigorous and comprehensive in nature. Having been through it, it's a good system and ensures quality in terms of the organizations that deliver the training. In another sense, the accreditation can be seen as an umbrella focused on the management of the training organisation, and then under an accreditation, one or more courses may be approved as required. Now, a registry of accredited training organisations is available on the Ayala website for you to consult. So looking at the generic training now, let's examine this and look at the courses delivered by the worldwide network of accredited training organisations. So these training courses are generic in nature and follow the Ayala model courses. So in principle, they equip VTS professionals with the knowledge and skill, in theory, to serve at any VTS centre worldwide. The training is important as it provides a framework for the profession and serves to equip VTS personnel with the knowledge and skill to deliver VTS in a consistent and harmonised manner for the benefit of the stakeholders, principally the mariners. As I mentioned previously, these courses are output driven, so they're focused on what comes out at the end of the course, VTS professionals with the knowledge and skill to perform their functions effectively and efficiently. So as these courses are output focused, their duration and configuration can vary, and it does vary around the world. For example, in native English speaking countries, the modules related to language may be shorter. If mariners are recruited, the Nautical Knowledge and VHF radio modules, for example, may be shorter. However, fully comprehensive programs are available for those with the right personal attributes and potential to be excellent VTS professionals, whatever their background. These courses are currently under review within the VTS committee, and a lot of work is taking place at the moment, in particular on the V103 course, to modernise and update that particular programme. And we'll be hosting an online workshop on that in the near future, so keep an eye on the Ayala website for that. So following the generic training, the V103 course is designed to be delivered locally. Now, this course provides a local context to enable the VTS professionals to put what they've learnt in the generic training into practice. It should cover in-depth training on local procedures, equipment, and local geography. The time taken for this training will inevitably vary, depending on the nature and complexity of the VTS area in question. Now, the national competent authority should review the on-the-job training which is carried out at each VTS centre and be satisfied with its scope and quality. Now, should a VTS professional move between centres, we do see some mobility within the profession, which is good. Then this on-the-job training process would be repeated at each VTS centre at which the individual is employed. So now we have trained VTS professionals working within a VTS centre. It's important that they are kept up to date with the latest developments in the sector, as it is quite fast moving and there's a lot of development taking place. This is achieved through the newest model course, V103/5. So part of this training is recurrent or refresher training. This should be carried out at regular intervals to cover the latest developments in VTS, as well as providing refresher training on the core principles of the generic training. This training is usually delivered by an accredited training organisation or a VTS authority with the approval of the National Competent Authority. The other types of training are adaptation training, which is commonly carried out when changes in the VTS environment happen, such as newly installed equipment or major procedural changes. The updating training elements of the revalidation training may be delivered following situations such as a break in service or when additional training needs have been identified. And updating training could be as simple as a welcome back type of training to brief the individual on what's happened while they've been away, through to a more comprehensive tailor-made program. So how can the Academy help? The Worldwide Academy, we have a strategy of enlighten, educate and engage. And we operate worldwide and are receiving more requests for assistance with respect to VTS. Essentially, we help coastal states identify their needs and requirements and assist them in developing their own capacity to solve their problems through technical missions, training, or other events. This is not any kind of consultancy, it's technical capacity building to enable states to have an understanding of their needs, how the Ayala standards can help them, and where they need to go to the Ayala industrial members to find services and solutions to help them. So finally, we recommend you use the Ayala standards, the recommendations, guidelines and model courses to plan your VTS provision. Ultimately, they will help you demonstrate your compliance with SOLAS, but very importantly, they result in the professional delivery of services to the key stakeholders, the mariners. So whether the mariner is in a VTS in Sydney, is in a VTS in London, is in a VTS in Vietnam, the nature of the VTS should be familiar and similar in nature, reflecting this harmonization that we have, thereby reducing incidents and accidents and increasing efficiency. So that was an overview of VTS training, and happy to take any questions as we proceed later on in the webinar. So now we'll move on to the next presentation, and over to you, Geraldine. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you, Kevin, for enlightening us in great detail on VTS training. Your presentation already answered some questions that I received via LinkedIn, but I have one question in my mind. As around the world, I see that most countries have challenges when starting with VTS, as they don't have senior VTS operators yet to conduct an on-the-job training. You explained the on-the-job training. So it's a kind of chicken and egg case. And I was wondering, how would you advise to start up in such a situation, Kevin?
It is a classic kind of chicken and egg situation there. So what I recommend is we think back to one of the early slides in the presentation where we're looking at the Ayala framework. If you follow the framework well and you design your operational procedures, implement the right equipment, have a good understanding of the volume of traffic and the degree of risk. So if you follow the implementation phase correctly, and there's a new guideline coming out, hopefully subject to council approval in the summer, all about training needs related to the establishment of a VTS. So if you follow the implementation phase, you'll have properly designed procedures, the appropriate equipment, the correctly defined VTS area, and then that will enable you to train the first group of VTS professionals. So essentially you have to have this big foundation built, and there's no easy way of doing it. It takes some time, but once you've built that foundation, it's there forever and you can build upon it. And that foundation would allow the first VTS professionals to be trained by the startup team.
Thank you, Kevin. I think this will be very helpful to many countries, as we have some who want to start up with VTS. The next speaker of today is Mr. Tran Viet Hai Dat from Vung Tau VTS Center in Vietnam. He serves as VTS supervisor and instructor, and he was awarded the prize of Best Score Awards among 20 candidates from 10 countries at the Asian VTS course conducted by Malaysian Marine Department that was funded by Japan Aid's Navigation Association and Japan Asian Integration Fund. Tran, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zanodin, and thank you, Mr. Kevin, for very informative presentation. And good afternoon, everybody. Have a good day. Firstly, I would like to share my slide first. Oh, here. I would like to introduce a little bit myself. My name is Dat from Ho Chi Minh Maritime Administration and Government Agency of Vietnam, responsible for maritime activities management. Today, I would like to share my experience in how to train new VTS operator with the example from VTS operator training program in Malaysia and its benefits for Vietnam. My presentation has 3 parts. The first one is overview about program training. The second one is my thoughts and feedback, and the final one is the benefit for Vietnam in training VTS operator. The first one is my overview about my training program. This project was proposed by the Marine Department Malaysia as a framework of cooperative activities in the field of transport segment, with the name of cooperation in the field of safety at sea, develop of VTS operator capacity. The project is to be funded by the Japan Asian Interaction Fund that the Japanese government had provided to Asian Secretariat. The 20 trainees from Asian countries participate in the training program, mostly assigned by their governments with the intention of improving VTS personnel of each countries. The implement body is Japan Aid to Navigation Association, WCAN, China, an expert group of Asian Regional Training Center for VTS operators, and liaison with the Ayala Maritime Training Institute of Malaysia. Location now, how this event is at Asian Regional Training Center, Maritime and Transport Training Institute in Malaysia. The course was taken around 3 months in Madrid. However, since 2020, China has installed e-learning system into each country of Asia to reduce the period in training of Madrid. Currently, trainees will take around 2 months studying theory in the e-learning system and 1 month in Madrid. I will show you a picture of the e-learning system afterwards. The first, this is my thoughts and my feedbacks about the program. First and foremost, the training program V103-1 for VTS operator of Asian Regional Training Center is comprehensive and useful for trainees who will be the VTS operator in any VTS center. And Mr. Kim Tak Lim also stated in 13 international VTS symposium that is excellent collaborative initiatives specifically focusing on VTS. The International Standard Training Program not only provides knowledge-intensive course about nautical field, but designs actively for training in effectively practicing. The program contracts 8 modules covering every needed aspect which a VTS operator could conform in reality and boost capacity of VTS operator in maintaining an efficient flow in maritime traffic in any situation. In part of practical training, many scenarios are generated to have training get familiar with different situations could be happen in real works and communicate effectively with vessel and allied services. The role of Ayala in the project, the delegate from Ayala assigned to supervise and support all stages of the program. At the final exam, delegates from Ayala and experts from Madrid will evaluate and examine all trainees one by one. Once a trainee certifies the examiner, they will be approved to achieve Ayala VTS operator certificate. My second part of my presentation is talking about syllabuses. The 8 modules in the program training for VTS operator, and I will go through this one by one. The first one is about the language. One complete of the course training will have knowledge of the English language and its composition and structure in respect of maritime terminology and the IMO standard marine communication phrases. to enable them to carry out the duty of VTS operator using the English language. It's emphasized by the regular employment standardized maritime vocabulary. VTS operator will clearly communicate in routine in emergency situation at their VTS center. The second module is about traffic management. The trainee will possess a truer knowledge of the principle of traffic management and the skills to analyze and apply the knowledge. In addition, the trainee will have a good understanding of national and international regulation as pertaining to the provision and conduct of vessel traffic service. The understanding by trainee of the subject and knowledge and skills gained in other areas, including the on-the-job training, which enables the routine day-to-day duties of VTS operator to be carried out in efficient and safe manner. Module 3 is about the equipment. The integrated VTS system will be introduced. The trainee will have been sufficiently trained to use ship identification system, which can refer as AIS, and will be familiar with method of recording and displaying information. They will also have the skills to operate vessel traffic management information system and other computer system for the purpose of assisting the development of VTS traffic image. Simulator is available in this part of training. It's possible to give training realistic exercise on the use of basic VTS equipment and its use in assisting a ship to navigate safely and expeditiously through a VTS area. Integrated exercise on handling emergency situations could also be carried out in this part of the course. The fourth one is about the nautical knowledge. On completion of the course, training will be able to read the information from a chart, fix the position on the ship on the chart, read information from timetable, and carry out course, speed, and distance calculation, taking into account any set, drift, or leeway of vessel. The trainee will have a sufficient understanding of ship and their system to enable them to appreciate any situation on board and to discuss matters and problems relating to the navigation of ship through a VTS area with its master, pilot, or navigating officer. The course will also enable trainee to have knowledge of port operation and ability to coordinate information relating to other services provided by port and harbor authorities, including offshore installation. Consideration of this part should be given to run simulated exercise to demonstrate the maneuverability of different types of vessel. And the fifth one is the communication coordination. Communication coordination is very important in VTS daily communication. And the trainee will have sufficient understanding and practice of the subject to enable them to prioritize, relay, and coordinate various types of communication between marine and marine-related agencies, both on board ship and inshore facilities. The communication follow Ayala list of situations and their associated response using MCP in VTS areas. The sixth module is about VHF radio. The trainee will have ability to transmit and receive efficiently and effectively voice and data radio communication by all radio subsystems used in VTS provided by the competent authority concerns in accordance with international regulation and procedures. They will also know the procedures used in radio, telephone, and radio data communication and be able to use radio, telephone, and radio data equipment particularly with respect to VTS issues, safety and navigation messages. Trainee will have a skill to ensure that English language messages in MCP relevant to VTS are correctly handled. The module 7 is personnel attribute. This element concerns the ability of VTS operators to work effectively and cooperate with others, and also build effective working skills. It also concerns the ability of VTS operator to form good relations, negotiate and resolve conflict with stakeholders. Other implication in these modules is to concern the ability of VTS operator to explore and complex problem and come up with solution to solve this. The last one is emergency situation. The trainee should have knowledge of related national and international regulation procedures relating to emergency situation, security alerts, pollution response, and other special circumstances. They should also have ability to identify properly the type and scale of an emergency, activate the relevant contingency plan, ensure the protection of the VTS area, and as far as practical, maintain the safe flow of marine traffic. The trainee also should have a sufficient understanding and practice to be able to coordinate effectively with allied service, particularly search and rescue authorities. And you can see this picture depicts students who are practicing communication between shipside and shoreside in the simulation room. At the entry level, scenario was generated by the instructor in the different room, and communication phase will pop up on the screen and student will follow that. After getting familiar with VTS works at the advanced level and in the examination, there were no instruction for communication anymore. Based on randomly generated scenario, trainee will analyze and handle this situation by themselves, and examiner will evaluate trainee based on their reaction and the way they solve the given situations. Apart from hard working hour in the class, the field trip were also organized for students to observe what happened in reality. Some destinations were chosen in Port Klang VTS Center, and some ports was choose for destination. And it's very beneficial for students to see and learn what really happened in the reality and how to organize marine traffic in the dense area like Klang VTS area. And the last part of my presentation is benefits and lessons learned for training VTS operator in Vietnam. Let me introduce you a little bit about Vietnam situation in maritime situation. Vietnam currently have 278 ports with the coastline lying around 3,200 kilometers. The number of vessels called in the port of Vietnam in 2019 was over 500,000, and it has been increasing by 22% annually. So it's essential for Vietnam to secure the safe traffic navigation and to train more VTS operators to secure this. As you can see here is a chart to indicate the rising number of the vessels calling at Vietnam from 2015 to 2019. Vietnam, of course, always values the importance of VTS in safe navigation. So many VTS centers has been installing in locations with high volume of marine traffic. The fresh training program with international standard for newly recruited VTS operator is indispensable. This picture depicts how we train in Vietnam, and the most sophisticated center of Vietnam is Vũng Tàu VTS Center. By now, there are 6 VTS centers in Vietnam. However, not all VTS centers in Vietnam work with 3 services, including information service, navigation service, and navigation assistance service, traffic organization service. Trainee for VTS operators position normally will be sent to Vũng Tàu VTS Center, where manage the highest marine traffic volume of vessels with the most sophisticated VTS system. You can see here is a working screen in Vũng Tàu VTS Center. We handle around 500 vessels per day. So just for ocean-going vessel, and so the total number for inland vessel is around up to 1,000 vessels per day. So it's a huge number to manage this. And the picture here is about the e-learning system has been installed by Ayala. So when we have a candidate to qualify to be sent to Malaysia to study VTS operator with Ayala certificate, they will take the course online first, and when they pass the course online, they will be qualified to go to Malaysia and take the course in Malaysia in my train. And this reduces a lot of time for training VTS operator in Vietnam and Asian countries. I would like to introduce a little bit about diagram of Vũng Tàu VTS Center. You can see this is a very sophisticated system of VTS Center. We have a 6 radar station, 2 AIS station, 69 CCTV station, and 2 VTS Center. And it connects with each other and working 24/7. And so that's why the new trainee for VTS operator will be sent to Vũng Tàu VTS Center around 3 weeks for training by now. And this system track down every single target in the area of 30,000 square kilometers. This is very huge area, so you can see this in the picture. The rings indicate the radar station, X radar station, to cover the area. Besides training VTS operator, the workshop among allied organizations as pilot companies, Vietnam City Organization, Port Control Organization, are periodically how to update and share valuable knowledge and experience. Because in Vietnam, particularly in the south with semi-diurnal characteristics, VTS and pilot always manipulate the tidal condition to maximize the volume of cargo carried on the vessel. And this is the knowledge we share in allied service to help our work more efficient and effectively in the daily time. In my situation, after successfully completing the program, the material and spirit of the course has been properly circulated to all VTS centers of Vietnam and received tons of positive feedback from my colleagues because it really helped in fresh training for trainee. We all use the material given from the Ayala to train new VTS operator in Vietnam. So this gave us many positive feedback to upgrade our VTS personnel in Vietnam. And the last picture I would like to show you the most certificated system VTS in Vietnam in 3 VTS centers in Hai Phong, Ho Chi Minh and Vũng Tàu VTS, we practically value the safe navigation. So we has been installing many VTS center alongside of Vietnam. So I would like to wrap up my presentation with the sentence of VTS center or VTS operator. So is it meaningful? That's something you have said or done, making a positive influence to someone's days or job. Thank you everyone for attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Tran. Well, you definitely influenced today with a very colorful and beautiful presentation full of beautiful pictures. And it also provided in-depth practical examples that many will benefit from. So thank you very much, Tran, because I can see that you have done a hard job to provide us with a perfect presentation. Well done, my friend. Let's see, we have some questions in the chat box already. Some have been answered by my colleague Kevin. Let me see. There is a question from Rai Chidambaram, and I'm happy to see you here, Rai. It's on simulation training, and it's answered by Kevin, but actually it's a good question whether you should work in a fictive playing area or in a generic area to conduct simulator training. And with INSNAS and TOS, where should you do that? And actually, I remember from the Netherlands, where I was head of training, that we did both. So we started in a fictive playing area, and we teach people the basic skills. And then later in the on-the-job training, we also moved on with simulation in their own regional playing area. So you can actually combine the two. My colleague Kevin is here, and I think he already looked into the chat box to answer some more questions, because we have some interesting questions. For example, will Ayala provide like a syllabus with the exact course material instead of only providing standards and guidelines and recommendations on how to deliver the course? Kevin, can you enlighten us on that, please?
Thanks very much, and thank you to Director Mishra for the question there from India. So in terms of the other training that Ayala is involved in, the Marine Aids to Navigation training, the kind of VTS operator equivalent training there is the Aids to Navigation Manager course. And there we do provide the course materials to the accredited training organizations if they have an agreement with us. But we don't provide, or we don't prepare training materials for the VTS training, because that's a matter for the accredited training organizations to develop their materials in a way which is suitable for the intended audience. That's not to say we can't do something along the lines of providing more support to the accredited training organizations, and for VTS that's what we want to do. We want to be more involved in the accredited training organizations, and that may involve providing some input to them from Ayala that can be used during the training. And I think a case in point has been how we operate with the ASEAN Regional Training Centre that Tran briefed us on there, in that the accredited training organisation in Malaysia has their own materials, and then we add some content to help them by agreement. So there may be something we can do there, and happy Director Mishra to pick up the conversation that we've been having on this in the past again, to drive it forward in a suitable way. I think a good step forward is on the way, because the VTS committee is almost on the home straight. I think Stefani's here, so I think that's a fair assessment, on the home straight now for finalising the review of the model course V1031, which will be better, because that will give much more direction to the training organisations as to the breadth and depth of the training that should be carried out. So it's a good question there, one probably that we should take a little bit more offline.
Thank you, Kevin. I see an interesting question from Watini Zoumin. Do training providers accredited by Ayala need to apply for any approval to conduct the remote online training? Well, that is an interesting question because we need to emphasize here that Ayala or the Worldwide Academy itself does not accredit training organizations. It's a national matter, so the national competent authority will do so. We can help you in that process. And maybe Kevin can enlighten us a bit more on that subject, or maybe you have something to add there, Kevin.
Yeah, so accreditation and approval is a very important topic. And it's important that the competent authority does this in accordance with the Ayala guidelines. That guideline is also under review to make it more modern in the light of developments. But in answer essentially to the question there about the remote training, and that would need an approval by the competent authority to do that, because it's being conducted in a different way. And so the competent authority there should approve that method of delivery to cover the way the course materials will be presented, the way the simulation will be conducted, the way the interaction between the students will happen, because it's a very different environment than face-to-face training, and so they would need to review and approve that method of delivery. So that's a matter for the competent authority to do that. As Geraldine said, we don't undertake accreditation and approval ourselves. Rather, Ayala sets the overarching standards for how that should be done. But if a competent authority has questions about how to go about this process, we're happy to answer them and advise on options as to how it can be done.
Thank you, Kevin. I see another question from Alexandri Gomes, and I think we have some ambitious people here who think, I'm not a former master mariner, I don't have experience on the bridge, but I do want to become a VTS operator. And I can imagine, because it's a very exciting job, so I can imagine that there are people around there who think, what if I want to become a VTS operator and I don't have the background for it? And I see Tran waving. Tran, do you have an answer to that question?
Yes, I can contribute the answer for this question. If you don't have a maritime background, so the Ayala course recommend V103/1 is work very effectively and efficiently for any new trainee VTS operator. And besides of this, we have a stimulation to help VTS operator to communicate it between the shore side and ship side effectively, so they will get familiar with the daily job. And in Vietnam, we also send the VTS operator working with the pilot, and they really come on board and see what happened in the bridge when the pilot maneuvering the vessel from the pilot boarding ground to the terminal.
Yes, thank you, Tran. I think you pointed out something very important, that future VTS operators, your trainees, you take them on board with your stakeholders, and they can see the view from the ship, and they can learn how it is to be on the bridge, because sometimes a VTS operator who has not much experience on the bridge is a bit surprised not receiving an immediate answer, but he doesn't realize that actually the navigator has to go to his VHF and the bridge might be quite big, so it may take him a minute to be able to answer, for example. So that is a good explanation and of you, and very helpful. Kevin, we almost reached the end of the official webinar. I was wondering if you may have looked in the questions, and if you may wish to point out one more thing to our listeners before we stop the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Geraldine. Let's have one more look then and see see what we have here. There's been lots of good questions, which I'm very grateful for. I think on the question of maritime education and no experience of the ship's bridge, I think Tran was right there. The training is completely open. If you have the right attributes and potential, then you can be trained to be a good VTS operator. I know in London we had a great mix of some from maritime, some not from maritime. The training is there, and I think the key piece is, have you got the right attributes and potential to do the job and enjoy this career. So I think the last one from Mr. Thanatip in Thailand there, another ASEAN alumni. Nice to see people here from the ASEAN region. Do we require English language test for new trainee? Well, the model course there specifies a minimum standard, which is International English Language Testing System Level 5 as the recommended minimum entry standard for the course. And so ideally that standard should be achieved before the participants attend the course, because that is the minimum level of English proficiency which the VTS committee has determined. And that's sort of an intermediate level, and even at that level, I think if you look at the definition of that level, it still recognises that you'll make many mistakes, but have a fundamental grasp of the language for the technical area in which you're working in. So that English language training is relatively easily available in many countries around the world commercially, but also there's the organisations like the British Council deliver English language training all over the world. So there's lots of options to get that. I'll stop there in view of the time. I think there's a few more questions come in, but we can possibly take those afterwards.
Yes, we will do so. So this brings us to the official end of the webinar. As a reminder, the next webinar on VTS assessment will take place on the 3rd of June at 11 UTC. Many thanks to all for joining, and special thanks to our excellent speakers today. Please feel free to stay and chat with us after the official end of the webinar, which is now. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Okay, so the recording will be stopped.